Imagine this. The United States, once the unquestioned global superpower, is now locking horns with India, one of the fastest rising powers of the 21st century. Washington's tariffs are squeezing New Delhi, but India is not bowing down. Instead, it's pushing back, strengthening ties with China, deepening relations with Russia, and sending shockwaves across the global order. This isn't just about tariffs. It's about who controls the future of world trade, energy, and diplomacy. And if America isn't careful, it might be creating the very alliance it fears the most. So today, let's uncover how India's bold defiance against U.S. tariffs is reshaping geopolitics and why this could mark the beginning of a new Asian century. The story begins with Washington's decision to slap steep tariff sum as high as 50% on Indian exports. Officially, the U.S. claims this is about protecting American industries and punishing India for continuing to buy cheap Russian oil despite Western sanctions. But beneath the surface, this is not just an economic move, it's a strategic warning. The U.S. is essentially telling India, choose a side, us or them. The problem, India doesn't take orders anymore. For decades, American policymakers were used to allies following their lead. But India isn't Europe. It isn't Japan. It's a rising superpower in its own right, and it refuses to compromise national interest for Western approval. In fact, India's oil imports from Russia have increased since the war in Ukraine, saving billions of dollars and giving its economy breathing room. Washington knows this, and it hates it. So how did India respond? Not with silence, not with compliance, but with defiance. At the ET World Leaders Forum, Indian officials delivered a powerful message. India will not be bullied. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, known for his sharp diplomacy, pointed out the hypocrisy of Western nations. Europe buys Russian gas quietly, but when India buys Russian oil openly, suddenly it's a problem. The message was clear: India will make its own choices whether Washington likes them or not. This moment matters, because for the first time, India is not just managing U.S. pressure, turning that pressure into an opportunity to reshape its alliances. Here's where it gets even more interesting. For years, India and China have been fierce rivals, fighting border clashes, trade disputes, and diplomatic battles. But now, US tariffs are pushing them closer. At recent diplomatic talks, Indian and Chinese officials agreed to accelerate trade cooperation, boost infrastructure projects, and even discuss military confidence-building measures. Why? Because both nations see the writing on the wall. The U.S. strategy is divide and rule. Keep Asia fragmented so Washington can dominate. But tariffs and sanctions are driving Asian powers to find strength in unity. Make no mistake, India is not about to become China's best friend. Rivalries will remain. But geopolitics isn't about friendship, it's about interests. And right now, both India and China have a shared interest: resisting U.S. economic coercion. And then there's Russia. Moscow has already become India's largest oil supplier, and despite Western pressure, the flow hasn't stopped. In fact, it's growing. For Russia, India is a lifeline, one of the few big markets still open. For India, Russia is a discount store for energy and defense supplies. And now, with China and India talking again, Russia could emerge as the bridge between Asia's two giants. Think about that for a second. A Moscow-New Delhi-Beijing triangle. Once dismissed as impossible, now slowly becoming reality, thanks, ironically, to Washington's aggressive policies. This realignment is sending ripples across the world. In Europe, leaders are watching nervously. They see India refusing to bend to U.S. pressure, and they wonder, if India can stand up, why can't we? In Africa and Latin America, where countries are tired of Western dominance, India's boldness is inspiring. They see a model of how to deal with the U.S. without becoming isolated. And in Washington itself, there's panic, because every tariff, every sanction, every threat is backfiring. Instead of isolating India, the U.S. is pushing it toward China, the very nightmare scenario American strategists warned about for decades. What we're witnessing is bigger than just tariffs. It's the slow erosion of American leverage. For decades, the U.S. dollar, the U.S. market, and U.S. military power gave Washington unmatched dominance. But in 2025, things are different. The dollar is being challenged by alternative payment systems like BRICS Pay. The U.S. market is no longer the only game in town. Asia's middle class is exploding. And militarily, America faces overstretch. Ukraine, Taiwan, the Middle East all draining its focus. In this environment, trying to strong-arm India is like squeezing sand. It slips through your fingers. India's strategy is clear. Stay non-aligned, buy energy where it's cheapest, trade with everyone, and never become anyone's puppet. This is why Prime Minister Modi speaks of a multipolar world. India doesn't want a US-dominated order or a China-dominated order. It wants a world where India itself is a pole of power. And guess what? That vision is starting to take shape. With tariffs forcing India to diversify, New Delhi is deepening trade with ASEAN, Africa, Latin America, and, yes, even China. It's not about liking China. It's about leveraging China to balance U.S. pressure. But here's the twist. This story isn't over. Tariffs are just the opening salvo. The real clash will come when Washington realizes its tactics aren't working. Will the U.S. double down with more sanctions? Will it try to restrict India's access to technology? Will it push harder on the military front, offering more weapons and partnerships to sway New Delhi back? Or here's the big question, will the U.S. adapt, realizing that bullying India is a losing strategy, and instead treat New Delhi as a genuine equal partner? That's the choice Washington faces. And whichever path it chooses will shape the next decade of global politics. So where does that leave us? India is under tariff fire. But instead of retreating, it's turning crisis into opportunity, deepening ties with Russia, cautiously opening to China, and inspiring much of the global South to follow its lead. America, meanwhile, risks isolating itself by refusing to accept the new reality, a world where power is shared, not monopolized. The question is, will the U.S. wake up before it's too late? Or are we witnessing the birth of a new Asian century, with India at the center of it all? Only time will tell.